Welcome to this edition of Head to Head. I'm your host, Cam McKinney, and this is episode number 255 of the podcast. And on this episode, I'm talking about Zion Williamson's recent comments about his recent injury struggles. NBA forward Zion Williamson has put a target on his back with his recent comments about why he is missing crucial basketball games down the stretch. Here's what he told the media, quote, "Physically, I'm fine. Now it's just a matter of when I feel like Zion. I know the atmosphere I'd be entering based off playoff experiences. Now it's just a matter of when I feel like Zion. When I go to make certain moves, there is that hesitation. Sometimes there's not, and sometimes there is. I understand the magnitude of these games coming up, and I don't want to be out there hesitating or doing something that may affect my team in a bad way." The minute Zion said he was fine physically is when he lost millions upon millions of people. The old school fans believe a player should tough it out if he's capable of doing anything on a basketball court. It's the reason Willis Reed is idolized to this day for playing in a game where he wasn't the best player on the court, but the belief was him just being there was all the Knicks needed. And another reason many are getting angry about Zion is because there's not a real understanding of what the actual injury he's dealing with is. The Pelicans say he is dealing with a hamstring issue, but a timetable for a return, it has been all over the map. The Pelicans have done Zion absolutely no favors by making it seem like there was a window for him to come back this season. If he can't come back, just say he can't come back. Here's more of what Zion has said about missing a lot of time and people questioning his passion to play basketball. Quote, "It's tough, I can't lie. From my perspective, I just want to play basketball. I want to hoop. I want to play the game I love. But the reality is, whether I check my phone, whether I'm watching TV, no matter what it is, I can't really escape what the world thinks, what people's opinions are, so it's frustrating." Another reason why Zion Williamson is getting a lot of flack is because this past offseason, the Pelicans gave the forward the max extension, 5 years, at least $193 million, with the chance to make over $231 million. And we all know how this works. If you get a lot of money and do not regularly play basketball, you get criticized a lot. And Zion is an easy target. These pundits want to go after him day after day after day because they can't say things like Zion Williamson is bad at basketball, but they can say things like Zion Williamson will never return to the court, even though that's probably not true. To a large extent, I'm sympathetic towards Williamson. The NBA has not been kind to big men historically injury-wise. In 10 seasons, Hall of Famer Bill Walton played only 60-plus games twice. Rockets big man Ralph Sampson missed barely any games his first 3 seasons, and then he dealt with injuries for the rest of his career. And then you have guys who didn't become the stars many predicted. Sam Bowie and Greg Oden, both for the Portland Trail Blazers, both high draft picks who are now considered 2 of the biggest busts of all time. A lot of the frustration around Zion Williamson is because how large the hype was. I mean, this was the next big, dominant big man that the NBA needed. This guy played at Duke. We were talking about how he couldn't fit in a shoe at one point. I mean, this was going to be one of the faces of the new NBA, and he really isn't here yet. He really hasn't made that big of an impact on the NBA. We've seen him play basketball. He has a really good field goal percentage. I don't think he's a great rebounder by any degree, but he has the chance to be a dominant basketball player if he played the sport regularly. But he's missed a lot of time, and so I think that there's that frustration going on here, is that fans want to see this guy play because we all, to a certain degree, bought into the hype. The talk around Zion Williamson is more annoying than what's actually going on with Zion Williamson. I mean, people have been on this guy's case since the CJ McCollum thing. When the Pelicans got CJ McCollum, it seemed like Zion Williamson was not overly enthusiastic about the team getting that player. And a lot of people get the sense that Zion Williamson Williamson does not really want to be a member of the New Orleans Pelicans, but then he signed for the big contract anyway. I mean, people are just looking for something to get mad about when it comes to Zion Williamson. And a lot of people are giving up on Zion as a player, and I'm willing to see where things go with Zion's career. Joel Embiid was an injury-riddled player in his early years in the league. Now he's a perennial MVP candidate. Zion's mistakes are not getting injured. It's how he's handling it publicly is the mistake. Saying you are not going to play basketball unless it's at an elite level logically makes sense, but fans and the media are going to look at that from an emotional standpoint and say things like 60% of Zion Williamson is better than whoever would be playing in his place. There's always going to be anger when an organization is looking out for the long haul, because at some point the here and now has to matter. I think that's where I'm at with the whole Zion Williamson thing. What are we waiting for? Are you going to be healthy at some point and play 75 to 80 games? Or is this just the reality of the situation and the Pelicans are just being overly cautious because of the money they've invested in this player? No matter how you feel about the situation, neither side is getting what they want from this situation. Zion doesn't want to be known as the guy who doesn't love basketball and is missing games when he's healthy, and the Pelicans, I'm sure, are sick and tired of answering the question of when Zion Williamson is going to play basketball again. They believe in the player, but they're sick and tired of talking about when he's going to come back and play. Here's an example of how this situation gets annoying. Zion Williamson immediately says that he feels physically fine and just doesn't feel like Zion. Then Pelicans president David Griffin comes out and says Zion Williamson has not been cleared by doctors. So these two sides are saying things that are opposing one another. That's how annoying this situation is. We're not getting a clear answer on what exactly is going on with Zion Williamson. That's the annoying part in all this, and that's why there's so much talk about the situation, because even the two sides themselves can't agree on what's actually wrong with Zion Williamson. And right now, it's kind of hard to have faith that these two parties are going to come to a good resolution of this situation. Like, I don't have faith that Zion is going to play 70 plus games next season. It's impossible to believe that, and it's impossible that the Pelicans know how to deal with that fact. You do have to feel bad for the Pelicans. One-star big man walks away and Anthony Davis joins the LA Lakers, wears that ridiculous t-shirt, and then wins an NBA championship. And almost immediately you find his heir apparent, who is dominant at times and hasn't reached his full potential in Zion Williamson. And how many years can the team wait for Zion to be healthy? What they might soon need to do is find someone else to be the face of their franchise. The Timberwolves have Karl Anthony Towns, who misses a lot of time, and that hurts, but it doesn't hurt as much anymore because they also have Anthony Edwards, who has the chance to be a top 10 player in the league. That's something the Pelicans should look for, a guy who can be the face of their organization that isn't Zion Williamson, because you may no longer be able to rely on Zion. Brandon Ingram is a good player, CJ McCollum is a good player, but they are not transcendent franchise players, and there's a serious question as to whether Zion will ever be that. I mean, at some point we're all going to lose sympathy for the Pelicans if year in and year out it's, oh, we didn't make it to the playoffs because we didn't have Zion Williamson. Oh, we didn't reach our full potential because we didn't have Zion Williamson. At some point you have to have Zion insurance. I mean, that's something that the Pelicans have to look to if they're going to keep this player, because we can't keep doing this same old song and dance. Well, the Pelicans are the next team on the rise. If Zion Williamson can play in 65 plus games, you can't keep doing that. You have to do something else, and I think now is the time to do that. Find another player you can rely on, that while Zion is out with injuries, you can still win basketball games. I am rooting for Zion Williamson to be healthy, and the biggest reason I'm rooting for Zion is because I hate the people who are just using him as a topic of conversation on sports talk shows. They love to come up with vitriolic attacks, even though they have no real passion for his career. I'm a fan of going after a player who is underperforming, but am uncomfortable going after injured players, because to me, that's going after them as a person, and I'm not qualified to do that. I don't know what Zion is going through day in and day out, and in the past I have never said anything bad about other players who have missed significant time, like Brandon Roy, Derrick Rose, Ben Simmons, and Markelle Fultz. Zion said something he shouldn't, and now you're all questioning whether or not he's tough, whether he's got heart, and whether or not he loves the game of basketball, and I believe it's uncalled for to ask those kind of questions. The guy is clearly not healthy enough to make an impact on the basketball court. How big of an impact he could make, I have no idea, but I trust that he knows what he's doing. And if he is making a bad choice by not playing, that's not my problem. That's not my thing. That's on the Pelicans as an organization to call him out. That's not on the media. That's not us being all righteous saying, Zion, you need to play basketball. If the Pelicans were coming out publicly and saying Zion Williamson should be playing basketball, then of course I'd be mad about what Zion is doing to this organization. But they are saying the opposite of what Zion is saying. He has not been cleared to play the sport of basketball. If he had been, I think I would feel differently about the situation, but that's not the case. He has not been cleared. The Pelicans are not saying he should have played in the play-in tournament. They're not saying those kind of things. They're saying the opposite. They are being annoying about the situation, and that's one reason why a lot of people are angry about the situation, but I don't think when it comes to the injury, they've done anything wrong. I don't think he's done anything wrong. I do think you can look at the situation from a basketball perspective and say things like, this is why most teams do not have their big men be their best players on their team, because they just can't be healthy for a super long period of time. Even the most dominant ones. Anthony Davis has gone through injury woes. If he was the best player on the Lakers, they would be in a lot of trouble, but they also have LeBron James. The Golden State Warriors have Steph Curry. Guards in the NBA don't miss a ton of games. I mean, it's the big men that are missing games. Nikola Jokic is a freak. He's not missing a ton of games. That's a rarity in the NBA. I mean, Shaquille O'Neal at the height of his power was missing a lot of games. That's why the Lakers also needed a guy like Kobe Bryant. If all they had was Shaq, they would have been in real trouble because the guy wasn't playing 75 games a year. I'm a fan of the Boston Celtics, who have Robert Williams, one of the most talented big men in the entire NBA. That guy misses a lot of time, but it's not that big of a deal because the Celtics have other stars. Their two best players are wing players in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who each and every season you can expect to play in 70 plus games a year. That's what you need in the new NBA. You cannot be a very good team when your best player just doesn't consistently play the sport of basketball. And it's far more likely that if your best player is a big man, he is going to end up missing significant time. I mean, that's been historically the case in basketball. I mean, there have been rare cases. In the 2000s, there were a lot of guys playing a lot of games who were big men, but the NBA is a different place now. The Tim Duncans are gone. The Dirk Nowitzkis are gone. The guys who are the best players on their team go through injuries. Joel Embiid has gone through some injury struggles. Now, he's been able to get to another place. He's become that MVP candidate. I hope that happens for Zion Williamson, but there is a real question as to whether or not that's ever going to happen to him. What's awful about the Pelicans and Zion is they are a team that's a Zion away from being a good basketball team that doesn't have to play in the play-in tournament. The team started this season 23-14. After Zion Williamson's injury, they went 19-27. That's how much he was needed to be on the court. They needed him to make an impact. They needed him to be there. They weren't very good without him. Basketball, as we all know, is that one sport where one individual can make all the difference in the world. It's why Michael Jordan won 6 NBA Finals. It's why LeBron James has won 4 NBA Finals. Those type of guys make the difference. LeBron James can go to any team right now and make them a playoff team. That's what the NBA is. It's a league of stars, and the stars make the most impact. And Zion Williamson has that star potential. Clearly, when he is on the basketball court, the Pelicans are a good basketball team. Again, 23 3-14. They were a top 4 seed in the Western Conference. If they had stayed that way, they would have had home court in the postseason. Instead, he misses a ton of time. They go 19-27 and lose in the play-in tournament. That's why the Pelicans have to immediately resolve this situation somehow. Maybe next season they have to do a better job of restricting his minutes. I don't know what you have to do, but you have to make it so Zion Williamson can at least play in 65 games next season if you still want him to be your best player. If that's what you want to do moving forward, if you want Zion Williamson to be the face of your organization, then you have to do a better job of managing him. That's why I blame the Pelicans as much as I blame Zion Williamson for what's happened here, because they have not managed it well. They have allowed him to make these statements like, I'm not Zion right now. I mean, you can't do that. You have to agree on what's going on, and these two parties are clearly not agreeing on what's going on, because Zion Williamson, your best player, should not be saying he's physically capable of playing the sport of basketball during the week in which you're playing in a play-in tournament to decide your future in the playoffs. I mean, that's insane. That's dysfunctional. Right now, the Pelicans and Zion together are creating dysfunction. They need to do everything to get on the same page, because you cannot have another season like this when you get off to a good start and then he misses due to injury. First, you need to help him avoid those injuries, but if he does get hurt, you have to manage that situation together. I get it. Zion Williamson wants to be a brand. He wants to be bigger than the Pelicans. But guess what, buddy? You are going to get blamed every single time the Pelicans get eliminated from the playoffs without you, because people are going to look at you and say, you could have been on the court. What are you doing? If you're going to make comments like, I don't feel like Zion right now, you're going to have a problem. Look at it this way. Zion Williamson was an easy target before he made these comments. He was missing games. He has that contract. Everyone was talking about, when is Zion Williamson going to play basketball again? The last thing he needed to do was to make those comments and say he was physically okay. I know you wanted to say something positive. You wanted to say that you are all right, but you don't say things like you're capable of playing basketball right now when it's time for your team to be in the playoffs and when they need you, because the Pelicans are not a good team without Zion Williamson. He needs to be more self-aware of the situation. That's what he's done wrong, is how he's dealing with the situation. It's not the situation itself. He probably is hurt. He is saying things because he wants to be larger than life. He wants to be Zion. He wants to be a mythical figure. Nobody is going to buy into that unless you're on the court making an impact. And if you're not on the court making an impact, just stay quiet about the situation and let the organization talk for you. Fair or unfair, these comments have made some people turn against Zion Williamson. I, for one, don't think that is fair. I think he's dealing with a lot. He's not playing basketball, yet he still wants to feel like a star, so that's why he's saying things like, I'm physically okay, and I want to get back to feeling like Zion Williamson. Again, everything he said logically makes a lot of sense, but a lot of sports fans have this idea that even if you are at 50 to 60%, you should do anything and everything to play in a basketball game. Because again, we all mythologize the Willis Reed situation. Oh, he barely played in a basketball game, but it had the most impact of all, and the New York Knicks went on to win an NBA championship. Now, that was not going to happen for the Pelicans. I don't think it would have been a good situation for Zion to play 15 minutes a game. I don't think that realistically that's going to happen in 2023. But when you say things like, I'm physically okay, that's where people's mind goes. They want you to play no matter what because they want you to be tough. And I think the last thing people say about Zion Williamson right now is that he's tough. And these comments are giving these people ammunition to go after him. Like, Zion Williamson just needs to stay quiet and not talk about the situation, and we should only see him when he's ready to play basketball again. I hope Zion Williamson plays next season 65 plus games. I hope he makes the All-Star game. I hope he becomes a top 10 player in the league, because the Pelicans are banking on it. They need it to happen, because as long as he's their franchise player, As long as he's the best player on the court, they need him to play regularly because they are a different team when he's not on the court. They are a bad team when he's not on the court. The biggest reason I want Zion to be healthy next season is because I don't want to go through this whole song and dance again. When will Zion play basketball? I just want this guy to be a star, and I think most people agree with that. We want to see Zion live up to the potential of being that number one draft pick.